David never imagined his morning coffee would be interrupted by first contact with aliens. As the lead scientist at the Space Research Station floating near Jupiter's moon Europa, he'd seen plenty of strange things. Ice geysers shooting up from the moon's surface, weird radio signals from deep space, and meteor showers that lit up the darkness like fireworks. But nothing had prepared him for this moment. The coffee mug slipped from his hands as the station's alarm system went crazy. Red lights flashed everywhere, and the computer's voice echoed through the halls. Unknown vessel approaching. All personnel, report to stations immediately. David ran to the main control room, his heart pounding. Through the massive window that looked out into space, he could see something that made his jaw drop. A ship unlike anything humans had ever built was gliding toward them. It looked like it was made of crystal and light, shimmering and changing colors as it moved. The vessel was beautiful and terrifying at the same time. "Sir, they're sending some kind of signal," reported Lisa, the communications officer. Her fingers flew across the keyboard trying to decode whatever message the aliens were sending. "It's not like any language we've ever heard, but there's definitely a pattern." David stared at the approaching ship. After years of searching for signs of life in the universe, life had found them instead. "Open all communication channels," he ordered. "Let them know we're peaceful." What happened next changed everything David thought he knew about the universe. A soft musical voice filled the control room, speaking directly into their minds without using their ears. The voice was gentle, curious, and somehow felt feminine. "Greetings, children of Earth. I am Princess Lyrelai of the Etherian people. We come in peace and friendship. May we speak with your leader?" The entire control room fell silent. Everyone looked at David, waiting for him to say something. He was just a scientist who studied alien bacteria and ice samples. He wasn't prepared to be humanity's first ambassador to an alien civilization, but someone had to step up. "This is David Chen," he said out loud, hoping they could hear him somehow. "I'm the senior scientist on this station. Welcome to our solar system. We're honored to meet you." "The honor is ours, David Chen. Your species has impressed us with your curiosity and courage in exploring the stars. We would like to learn about your people and share knowledge with you. May I come aboard your station?" David's mind raced. This was the most important moment in human history, and he was making decisions that would affect everyone on Earth. But looking at the peaceful, graceful ship floating nearby, he felt deep down that these visitors meant no harm. "You're welcome here," he replied. "How would you like to board our station?" The answer came in a way that left everyone speechless. A beam of soft, golden light shot from the alien ship and created a bridge of pure energy between the two vessels. And walking across this bridge of light came a figure that looked almost human, but somehow more. Princess Lyrelai was tall and elegant, with skin that seemed to glow with a soft silver light. Her hair looked like starlight itself, shifting and shimmering with every step. Her eyes were the color of deep purple twilight, and they held a wisdom that seemed older than Earth itself. She wore robes that moved like liquid mercury, and when she walked, she seemed to glide rather than step. But what struck David most wasn't her alien appearance. It was the way she looked around with such genuine curiosity and wonder, like a child seeing snow for the first time. Despite being clearly from an advanced civilization that could travel between galaxies, she seemed fascinated by the simple things on the human space station. "Your vessel is remarkable," she said, running her fingers along the metal walls. "Such practical design, built with limited resources, yet still capable of sustaining life in the void. My people could learn from this efficiency." David found himself relaxing around her. Despite her otherworldly appearance, Princess Lyrelai felt approachable and kind. "Your ship is incredible too. How do you travel such vast distances?" "We fold space itself," she explained, gesturing gracefully with her hands. "What you call light years we experience as steps. But technology is not why I'm here. I'm curious about something far more interesting than engines and energy sources." "What's that?" "Emotions," she said, and for the first time her confident demeanor seemed to falter slightly. My people evolved beyond such things long ago. We are logical, efficient, and peaceful. But we've lost something in the process, something that makes your species unique in the galaxy. David was confused. You want to study human emotions? I want to understand them, Lyreley said. We've observed your species for some time. You create art that serves no logical purpose except beauty. You form bonds that sometimes cause pain but that you value anyway. You dream of things that may never happen. These concepts are foreign to us, yet they seem to drive everything your people do. Over the next few hours, David gave Princess Lyreley a tour of the space station. She was fascinated by everything. The small garden where they grew vegetables, the recreation room where the crew played games and watched movies, even the simple cafeteria where everyone gathered to eat and talk. You share meals together even when it would be more efficient to eat alone, she observed, watching the crew laugh and chat over dinner. Eating together isn't about efficiency, David explained. It's about connection. We use meal times to bond, to share stories, to feel like we belong somewhere. Lyreley watched the humans with intense interest, like a scientist studying a fascinating new species. But David noticed something else in her expression. There was longing there, as if she wished she could understand what it felt like to belong somewhere the way humans did. As the day turned to night shift on the station, David showed Lyreley to the observation deck. Through the transparent walls, they could see Jupiter's massive form and the countless stars beyond. Earth was just a tiny blue dot in the distance. It's beautiful, Lyreley whispered, and for the first time, her voice carried something that sounded almost like emotion. It is, David agreed, standing beside her. Sometimes when I look out there, I feel so small, but also connected to something bigger than myself. Connected, she repeated the word slowly, as if trying to understand its full meaning. Is this what you humans call wonder? I think so. Wonder, awe, maybe a little bit of homesickness too. Lyreley turned to look at him, her purple eyes reflecting the starlight. Homesickness. Missing a place when you're away from it. Another emotion that serves no logical purpose, yet it seems important to you. Very important, David said softly. It reminds us what we care about. As they stood together watching the stars, something unexpected happened. Lyreley's skin began to glow brighter, shifting from silver to a warm golden hue. She looked down, at her hands in surprise. What's happening to you? David asked, concerned. I don't know, she admitted. My people's skin changes color with our mental states, but I haven't seen this glow since I was very young, before our emotions were trained away. David realized what was happening, though he didn't say it out loud. Princess Lyreley was beginning to feel things her people thought they had evolved beyond. And somehow, being around humans was awakening, parts of her that had been sleeping for centuries. Will you be here tomorrow? She asked as the shift change bells chimed throughout the station. Of course. Will you? For the first time since arriving, Lyreley smiled. It was a small, uncertain expression, but it transformed her entire face. Yes. I find myself very curious about what tomorrow might bring. As she walked back toward the docking bay where her ship waited, David watched her go. Something told him that this was just the beginning of something extraordinary. He had no idea how right he was, or how much both of their lives were about to change. Standing alone under the stars, David couldn't shake the feeling that he'd just met someone who would become very important to him. The thought should have scared him, but instead it filled him with an excitement he hadn't felt since he was a child dreaming of exploring the stars. Tomorrow couldn't come fast enough. The next 3 weeks passed like a dream David never wanted to wake up from. Every morning, he found himself rushing to the observation deck where Princess Lyreley waited with questions about humanity that made him see his own species in completely new ways. Why do humans create music? She asked one morning, listening to the soft classical piece playing in the background. The sounds serve no practical purpose, yet I notice your heart rate changes when you hear them. David smiled, pulling up different songs on his tablet. Music makes us feel things. Happy, sad, excited, peaceful. It's like emotional communication without words. He played her everything from gentle piano pieces to upbeat pop songs. With each new melody, Lyralay's skin shifted colors. Soft blues for sad songs, warm golds for happy ones, deep purples for mysterious orchestral pieces. She was experiencing human emotions through music, even though she didn't fully understand what was happening to her. "This is remarkable," she whispered, listening to a love ballad. "The sounds create sensations I have no words for in my language. That's because your people eliminated those feelings," David said gently. "But maybe they're still there, just sleeping." As days passed, their conversations grew deeper. Lyralai told him about her home world, a place of crystal cities and floating gardens where logic governed everything. No crime, no war, no suffering. But also no laughter, no art created for pure joy, no one falling in love under starlit skies. "We solved all problems by removing what caused them," she explained. "Emotions led to conflicts, so we evolved beyond them. Desires led to inequality, so we eliminated wanting anything beyond basic needs. We achieved perfect peace." "But at what cost?" David asked. "I'm beginning to understand the cost," Lyralai replied, her skin shimmering with that confused golden glow. "We gained peace, but lost something precious. We stopped truly living." David shared human art with her, paintings that captured sunsets, sculptures that showed movement and emotion, poetry that made no logical sense but somehow spoke to the soul. Each piece affected Lyralai more strongly than the last, but it wasn't just cultural exchange. David found himself opening up to her in ways he'd never done with anyone. He told her about his childhood dreams of meeting aliens, his fears about being so far from Earth, his hope that humanity would find its place among the stars. "You're not like other humans I've observed," Lyralai said one evening as they watched Jupiter's storm swirl in the distance. "How so?" "You listen not just with your ears but with something deeper. When I speak, you try to understand not just my words, but what I'm feeling. Even though I'm from a completely different species, you treat my thoughts and experiences as important as your own." David felt his cheeks warm. That's what friendship means to humans, caring about someone else's happiness as much as your own. "Friendship," she repeated the word slowly. "Another concept my people abandoned. We have colleagues, associates, necessary connections, but friends? I've never had a friend before." "Well, you do now," David said without thinking. The moment the words left his mouth, something shifted between them. Lyralai's entire being seemed to glow brighter, and she turned to look at him with an expression of wonder and something else he couldn't quite identify. "I have a friend," she said softly, as if testing how the words felt. "David is my friend." But their growing closeness didn't go unnoticed. Captain Rodriguez, the station commander, pulled David aside after a week of daily meetings with the alien, Princess. "Listen, Chen, I get it, this is exciting stuff. First contact, cultural exchange, all that. But Earth Command is asking questions. They want to know what technology we're learning, what strategic advantages we're gaining. They're not sending reports back about your feelings seminars with the alien princess." David felt a flash of anger. This isn't about feelings seminars. Understanding their culture is the key to building a real relationship between our species. Your job is to learn about their technology and their military capabilities, Captain Rodriguez said firmly. "Leave the touchy-feely stuff for the diplomats when they get here." David wanted to argue, but he bit his tongue. What he and Lyralai were sharing went far beyond official duties. It was becoming something personal, something important that he couldn't explain to his superiors. Meanwhile, Lyralai faced her own challenges. Her royal guard, Commander Vexhai, watched her daily transformations with growing concern. "Princess, your appearance has changed significantly since arriving here," he said during one of their private conversations. "The elders on the homeworld are beginning to ask questions about your extended stay." "I'm conducting important research," Lyralai replied, but her voice lacked conviction. "Research? Or are you experiencing what the humans call emotional attachment?" Lyralai's skin flickered between colors as she struggled with feelings she couldn't name. "I don't know what's happening to me, Vexhai, but for the first time in my life I feel alive." truly alive. Commander Vexhai had served the royal family for over 2 centuries. He'd watched Lyrelay grow from a curious child into a dutiful princess who followed every rule, accepted every arranged decision about her future. But now she seemed like someone entirely different. "Princess, you are engaged to Lord Zephron. The bonding ceremony is planned for your return. These changes could be seen as betrayal of your sacred duties." The reminder hit Lyrelay like a cold wave. In all her excitement about discovering emotions and friendship, she'd almost forgotten about her arranged marriage. Lord Zephron was everything her people valued: logical, powerful, completely without emotional weakness. Their union would strengthen 2 great houses and produce offspring suitable for leadership. But the thought of returning to that life, after experiencing what friendship felt like, after discovering that she could actually feel joy and wonder and connection, made something inside her rebel for the first time ever. That night, as she walked back to her ship, Lyrelay passed by the recreation room where David was teaching other crew members to play an Earth card game. She watched him laugh at someone's joke, saw how he encouraged the younger crew members, noticed how he made everyone feel included and valued. "Is that what caring looks like?" she whispered to herself. She didn't realize David had seen her watching. When he looked up and their eyes met through the window, something passed between them that neither could deny. It wasn't just friendship anymore. Something deeper was growing, something that would change both their destinies forever. But with only 2 weeks left of the diplomatic mission, time was running out for both of them to figure out what these new feelings meant, and whether love could really bridge the gap between 2 completely different worlds. The breaking point came on, a Tuesday that started like any other day. David was in the station's small botanical garden, the one place that reminded him of Earth. He'd been tending to the tomato plants when the station's emergency alarm screamed through the corridors. "Hull breach in Section 7, all personnel. Evacuate immediately." David's blood ran cold. Section 7 was where Lyrelay's ship was docked. Without thinking, he dropped his tools and ran toward the danger instead of away from it. The corridor filled with smoke as he got closer. Through his emergency mask, he could see that something had gone wrong with the alien ship's docking connection. Sparks flew from damaged cables, and the air shimmered with energy discharges that could kill a human instantly. "Lyrelay!" he shouted, but got no answer. Commander Vexhai appeared through the smoke carrying emergency equipment. "The princess is trapped inside the ship. Our quantum core is malfunctioning. The energy feedback will destroy both vessels if we cannot stabilize it." "How can I help?" David asked without hesitation. "You cannot. The energy levels would kill any human who gets too close. We must wait for our repair teams." But David could see through the small window into Lyrelay's ship. She was unconscious on the floor, her skin flickering weakly between colors. If they waited for repair teams, she might not survive. "There has to be something," David insisted, studying the damage. His years of training in emergency procedures kicked in. "What if we reroute power from our station, create a feedback loop that cancels out your quantum discharge?" Vexhai looked at him with new respect. "That might work, but someone would have to manually connect the systems. The person doing it would be exposed to lethal energy levels." "Then I'll do it," David said, already reaching for the tools. "Human, you will die." "Maybe, but she'll definitely die if we do nothing." For a moment that felt like forever, Vexhai stared at this human who was willing to sacrifice himself for an alien princess he'd known for barely 3 weeks. Then the commander nodded and began explaining the technical requirements. Working together, they jury-rigged a connection between the human station and the alien ship. David's hands shook as he worked, not from fear, but from the energy discharges that were getting stronger every second. "David, no." He looked up to see Lyrelay had regained consciousness. Through the window he could see her trying to stand, her face filled with panic as she realized what he was doing. "Stay back," he shouted to her, then turned to Vexhai. "Ready?" The alien commander nodded grimly. "It has been an honor knowing you, David Chen." David smiled, thinking of all the conversations he'd had with Lyrelay about human emotions. "Tell her this is what love looks like." He made the final connection. The energy discharge hit him like lightning, throwing him backward against the corridor wall. The last thing he saw before losing consciousness was Lyra Lay's face pressed against the window, her skin blazing with colors he'd never seen before. When David woke up 3 days later in the medical bay, the first thing he saw was Lyra Lee sitting beside his bed. Her appearance had changed dramatically. Instead of her usual silver glow, her skin showed deep, rich colors that shifted with every breath. Her eyes, once distant and curious, now held something entirely different. "You almost died," she whispered. "But you didn't," David replied weakly. "That's what matters." "Why?" she asked, and her voice broke on the word. "Why would you risk everything for me?" David tried to sit up, wincing at the pain. "Because that's what you do for someone you—" He stopped, realizing what he was about to say. "Someone you what?" Lyra Lay leaned closer, her skin shimmering with anticipation. "Someone you care about," he finished, not quite ready to use the other word. But Lyra Lay heard what he didn't say. "Commander Vexhai told me your last words before the connection. You said to tell me this is what love looks like." David's face flushed red. "I was probably delirious from the energy exposure." "No," Lyra Lay said firmly. "You were showing me something my people lost centuries ago, the willingness to sacrifice everything for another person's well-being. I've been studying human love for weeks, but I never understood it until I watched you risk your life for mine." She stood and walked to the window, her back to him. "David, I need to tell you something about myself, something that changes everything." "What is it?" "I'm not just any princess. I'm heir to the Etherian throne, and I'm engaged to be married the moment I return home." The words hit David like another energy discharge. "Engaged?" "It's been arranged since birth. Lord Zephyron of House Stellaris. Our bonding will unite two of the most powerful families in our empire. The ceremony is planned for 1 week after I return." David felt like the medical equipment attached to his chest was the only thing keeping his heart beating. "I see. Do you?" Lyra Lay turned back to him, and for the first time since he'd known her, she looked vulnerable. "Because I don't think you understand what's happened to me since I've been here. What you've awakened in me." "Lyra Lee, I've lived for over 2 centuries, David. I've traveled to hundreds of worlds, met countless species, learned technologies. That would seem like magic to humans, but I've never felt anything like what I feel when I'm with you." David stared at her, hardly able to believe what he was hearing. "You asked me once what connection meant to humans. Now I know. It means finding someone who sees your soul and accepts it completely. Someone who makes you want to be better than you are. Someone worth dying for." She moved closer to his bed, her skin glowing with that warm golden light he'd grown to love. "David, I think I'm falling in love with you, and I have no idea what to do about it." The silence that followed was filled with the sound of David's heart monitor, beeping faster and faster as he processed what she'd just said. "You're engaged," he said quietly, "to someone I've never loved and never will. You have responsibilities to your people. And what about my responsibility to myself? To this person I'm becoming?" David closed his eyes, feeling the weight of an impossible situation. "Lyra Lee, even if you weren't engaged, we're from different species, different worlds. How could this possibly work?" When he opened his eyes, she was smiling through what looked suspiciously like tears. "I don't know," she admitted. "But 3 weeks ago, I would never have asked that question because I never would have cared about the answer. Now it's all I can think about." Before David could respond, Commander Vexhai entered the medical bay with news that would change everything. "Princess, I've received urgent communication from the home world. Lord Zephyron grows impatient with your extended diplomatic mission. He's coming here personally to escort you home. His fleet will arrive in 3 days." Lord Zephyron arrived exactly when Commander Vexhai said he would, but nothing could have prepared David for the reality of meeting Lyra Lay's intended husband. The alien lord was everything David wasn't. Tall, imposing, with skin that glowed. like polished platinum and eyes that held the cold calculation of someone who had never doubted his place in the universe. Princess Lirelei. Zephron's voice carried the authority of someone accustomed to being obeyed without question. Your absence has caused concern among the High Council. There are rumors that your extended stay has led to complications. David E. watched from across the docking bay as Lyralei's skin flickered nervously between colors. In the 3 days since Zephron's ships had arrived, she'd barely spoken to David. The vibrant, curious person he'd fallen in love with seemed to shrink back into the dutiful princess she'd been before coming to the human station. I have been conducting valuable cultural research, Lyrelei replied, her voice carefully neutral. Cultural research. Zephron's tone made it clear what he thought of that idea. The High Council is not interested in the primitive emotional displays of these humans. We came for technological exchange, not to study their feelings. David felt anger flare in his chest, but Captain Rodriguez put a warning hand on his shoulder. The captain had made it clear that any interference with the alien politics could jeopardize humanity's first interstellar alliance. The bonding ceremony has been moved forward, Zephron continued. We will depart for home tomorrow and the ritual will take place immediately upon our arrival. The delay has already caused enough speculation about your stability. I understand, Lyrelei said quietly, and David's heart broke at the resignation in her voice. That evening, David found himself alone in the observation deck, staring out at the alien fleet that would take Lyrelei away forever. The massive ships hung in space like dark clouds, blocking out the stars he'd grown to love watching with her. He thought about everything that had happened in the past month. How Lyrelei had arrived as a curious alien princess and slowly become the most important person in his universe. How she'd awakened to emotions her people had forgotten, only to have that awakening crushed by duty and obligation. I wish I could marry her, he whispered to the stars, the words torn from his heart. I wish I could give her the love she deserves, the freedom to choose her own path, the chance to keep growing into the incredible person she's becoming. The observation deck was supposed to be empty. The night shift was minimal, and everyone else was either sleeping or preparing for the aliens' departure tomorrow. David thought he was completely alone with his heartbreak, but alien technology was far more advanced than human sensors. My answer is yes. David spun around, his heart stopping. Lyrelei stood behind him, her skin glowing with that warm, golden light that he'd learned meant she was experiencing deep emotion. But this time, the glow was brighter than he'd ever seen it, like starlight had somehow gotten trapped beneath her skin. How long have you been there? He asked, hardly able to breathe. Long enough, she said, stepping closer. Your people's communication systems aren't the only way to hear what's happening on this station. David felt heat rise in his cheeks. I didn't mean for anyone to hear that. I was just telling the truth, Lyrelei finished. Something I haven't been brave enough to do. She moved to stand beside him at the great window, looking out at her people's ships. Do you know what those vessels represent, David? Power, control, the certainty that comes from never questioning, never wanting anything different from what you're given. They represent your home, David said quietly. Your responsibilities. No. Lyrelei shook her head, her hair shimmering like captured moonlight. They represent a cage I've been living in my entire life without realizing it. Until I met you. She turned to face him fully, and David saw something in her expression that made his breath catch. Determination. The same look she'd worn when she'd first decided to learn about human emotions. David, I've made a decision. I'm not going back. What? David stared at her in shock. Lyrelei, you can't be serious. You're a princess. Your people need you. My people need someone who can lead them into the future, not someone who's trapped. In the past, and I've realized something these past few weeks, the future isn't about eliminating emotions and desires. It's about learning to balance them with wisdom. She reached out and took his hands, and David felt that electric connection that had been growing between them since their first meeting. I've been thinking about what you said once, about how humans create art for no logical reason except that it makes them feel something beautiful. What if that's not illogical? What if beauty and love and wonder aren't weaknesses to be overcome, but strengths that make life worth living? David's mind raced. But Lord Zephyrin, your engagement, your throne, can all exist without me, Lyrelei said firmly. Zephyrin will find another alliance to strengthen his house. Someone else can inherit the throne. But there's only one David, Chen in the universe, and only one chance for me to choose love over duty. The consequences could be terrible, David warned. Your people might see this as betrayal, or they might see it as evolution. Lyrelei countered. Someone has to be the first to choose a different path. Someone has to show them that there's more to existence than mere survival and efficiency. David looked into her eyes and saw not just the alien princess he'd fallen in love with, but a revolutionary. Someone willing to risk everything to prove that love was worth the risk. If you stay, what happens to you? He asked. I become a refugee, an exile, someone without a home or a people. Her skin flickered with uncertainty for a moment, then blazed bright with resolve. But I also become free to choose my own destiny, free to explore what it means to love and be loved, free to help bridge the gap between our species not as a diplomat, but as someone who chose connection over separation. The magnitude of what she was offering hit David like a wave. She was willing to give up literally everything for him. Her throne, her people, her entire way of life. I can't let you do that, he said, even as every cell in his body screamed at him to say yes. You can't stop me, Lyrelei replied with a smile. I've already told Commander Vexhai. He's surprisingly supportive of my decision. He is. He told me something interesting. He said that in all his centuries of service, he's never seen anyone transform the way I have these past weeks. He believes that what I've discovered here might be exactly what our people need to remember. David felt hope and terror warring in his chest. What about Lord Zephyrin? That, Lyrelei admitted, is going to be complicated. The next morning brought the confrontation David had been dreading. Lord Zephyrin stood in the station's main conference room, his platinum skin flickering with what David had learned were signs of controlled anger in Etherian physiology. Captain Rodriguez sat at the table looking like he wanted to be anywhere else in the galaxy. Princess Lyrelei has informed me of her intention to remain here, Zephyrin said, his voice cutting through the tension like ice. This is clearly the result of some form of human manipulation or contamination. No one manipulated anyone, David said, standing up despite Captain Rodriguez's warning look. She made her own choice. Choice. Zephyrin repeated the word like it tasted bitter. Humans, and their obsession with individual desires over collective good. Do you have any idea what chaos your selfishness will cause? I know what happiness it could create, David replied, feeling braver than he had any right to be while facing an alien lord who could probably destroy the entire station with a thought. Happiness. Zephyrin's laugh was cold and sharp. A temporary, chemical reaction that clouds judgment and leads to poor decisions. We evolved beyond such primitive responses millennia ago. Did you? David challenged. Or did you just become afraid of feeling anything real? The room went dead silent. Captain Rodriguez looked like he was calculating how quickly he could get to the escape pods, but David couldn't stop himself. Everything he'd been holding back for days came pouring out. You talk about collective good, but what good is a society where no one truly lives? Where no one creates anything beautiful just for the joy of creating it? Where no one loves so deeply they'd risk everything for another person's happiness? You speak of things you don't understand, Zephyrin said dangerously. I understand that Lyrelei was dying inside before she came here. I understand that she's more alive now than she's ever been, and I understand that you're terrified of what that means for your perfectly controlled world. Enough. Zephyrin's skin blazed bright white with fury. The princess returns with me today. This discussion is over. Actually, it's not. Everyone turned to see Lyrelei entering the room, but she wasn't alone. Commander Vexhai walked beside her, and behind them came Captain Rodriguez's second-in-command, Lieutenant Kim, carrying a tablet with official documents. I've been in communication with both our governments, Lyrelei announced. her skin glowing with calm determination. "And I believe I've found a solution that serves everyone's interests." Lord Zephron's expression was dangerous. "There is no solution except your return to fulfill your obligations." What if there was a way for me to fulfill my obligations while also choosing my own path? Lyrelai asked. What if there was a way to turn what you see as betrayal into the foundation for something unprecedented between our species? She activated the tablet Lieutenant Kim had brought, projecting a holographic document into the air between them. "A marriage alliance," she continued, "but not the one that was originally planned." David's heart stopped. "Lyrelai, what are you saying?" "I'm saying that our people need closer ties, deeper understanding, and longer-term cooperation. The original plan was for me to marry within our own species to strengthen internal alliances. But what if instead I married outside our species to strengthen interstellar ones?" The room erupted in shocked voices, but Lyrelai pressed on. "David would become not just my husband, but Earth's permanent ambassador to the Etherian Empire. Our union would create the first official family bond between humans and Etherians. Our children would be living bridges between two worlds." "This is unprecedented," Zephron said, but David noticed his anger was being replaced by calculation. "Exactly," Lyrelai agreed. "Unprecedented, but not illogical. Think about it, Zephron. What better way to ensure long-term peace and cooperation than literal family ties? What better way to study and understand human potential than to have humans integrated into our royal house?" Commander Vexhai stepped forward. "I have already contacted the High Council with this proposal. They are intrigued by the possibilities." "And Earth's government?" Captain Rodriguez asked, looking stunned. Lieutenant Kim activated another section of the document. "They see the strategic advantages: a permanent human presence in Etherian space, access to advanced technologies and cultural exchange programs that could benefit both species for generations." David felt like he was watching his life change in real time. "But what about love?" he asked quietly. "Doesn't anyone care about what Lyrelai and I actually feel for each other?" "That," Lyrelai said, moving to stand beside him, "is the most beautiful part of this plan. For the first time in Etherian history, a royal marriage would be based on genuine affection rather than political necessity." She took his hand, and her skin blazed with that warm golden glow he'd grown to love. "Our feelings aren't a complication to be managed, David. They're the foundation that makes everything else possible. When two people truly care for each other, they'll work harder to make their partnership succeed. They'll fight to protect what they've built together." Lord Zephron studied the documents floating in the air, his expression unreadable. Finally, he spoke. "This would require approval from both governments. Extensive negotiations about citizenship, inheritance rights, diplomatic protocols. The complexity is staggering." "But not impossible," Lyrelai said. "No," Zephron admitted slowly. "Not impossible, and I can see the political advantages." He looked at David with something that might have been respect. "You would be willing to leave your homeworld permanently? To live among aliens who might never fully accept you?" David looked around the room at all the people whose approval would determine his future. Then he looked at Lyrelai, whose love had already determined his heart. "I'd be willing to go anywhere with her," he said simply. "But more than that, I'd be honored to help build bridges between our peoples, to help show both sides that differences don't have to mean division." "And what about children?" Zephron pressed. "Hybrid offspring with uncertain capabilities and no clear place in either society. Children who could become living proof that love conquers fear," Lyrelai replied. "Children who could inherit the best of both species and help create a future neither of us can imagine alone." The silence that followed felt like the entire universe holding its breath. Finally, Commander Vexhai spoke. "I have served the royal family for over 2 centuries. I have seen political marriages that brought temporary peace but no lasting joy. For the first time, I am looking at a union that could bring both." Captain Rodriguez cleared his throat. "Well, I never thought my biggest diplomatic crisis would involve planning an interstellar wedding, but stranger things have happened in space." Lord Zephron studied David and Lyrelai for a long moment. Finally, his rigid expression softened slightly. "Perhaps," he said slowly, "it is time for our people to remember that evolution doesn't always mean leaving things behind. Sometimes it means integrating the best of what we find along the way." He stood and gave a formal bow to Lyrelai. "Princess, if this is truly your choice, made freely and with full understanding of the consequences, then I will support your proposal to the High Council." "It is my choice," Lyrelai said firmly. "The first real choice I've ever been free to make." 6 months later, David found himself standing in a crystal cathedral on Lyrelai's homeworld, wearing robes that seemed to be made of captured starlight. Through the transparent walls, he could see two species celebrating together for the first time in galactic history. The ceremony was unlike anything either species had ever witnessed. Human traditions blended with Etherian rituals. Earth flowers grew alongside alien crystals that sang in harmonious frequencies. David's family had traveled farther than any humans in history to attend, while Lyrelai's people experienced their first royal wedding where the bride glowed with genuine happiness instead of dutiful resignation. As they exchanged vows that were broadcast simultaneously to Earth and across the Etherian Empire, David realized that their love story had become something bigger than either of them had imagined. They weren't just two people choosing each other. They were proof that understanding could bridge any gap, that love could overcome any obstacle, and that the future belonged to those brave enough to choose connection over fear. When Lyrelai's skin blazed with joy as they sealed their bond, David heard cheers in a dozen languages. But the only voice that mattered was hers, whispering in his ear, "Thank you for teaching me that the best adventures begin when you choose love over safety." Looking out at the celebration around them, David realized that their greatest adventure was just beginning.